Hello and welcome to the Michael Mamas Show. I'm your host, Michael Mamas, and we're coming to you from Mount Soma, home of the Sri Someshwara Temple in the mountains of Western North Carolina. I'm here today with Scott Davalos. Adrian is off with family things. So at any rate, the name of this podcast is Churches Burning. Defiance versus commitment versus self-actualization. And you know, the way this all came about was I was watching the news, Ice Channel surf, and I came across something where they were talking. I don't know how true this is. I think it's got to be true. I mean, I don't know. But they were talking about how in British Columbia, Vancouver area, I guess, they are burning churches. I don't know who it is. I think maybe they mentioned Antifa, or maybe they don't know. I don't know, but just different churches, almost like randomly burning churches. And I heard on the news there that they mentioned it to Trudeau, and he just said, well, that's not the way to go. Kind of blew it off a little bit or something, and who knows the truth, you know. But did you hear about that, Scotty? Did you know that?
No, I was just going to look that up. I was like, I haven't heard that one.
But yeah, because you know you have family up there in the Seattle area, so it might interest you a little more, even just from that perspective. At any rate, the idea of churches being burned, I don't know, it just triggered some thought for me. And you know, I think a lot of people who've heard my lectures and these talks and things, I think some people might feel like, well, I'm kind of anti-religion a little bit, or critical of religions or whatever. And I can understand that, but really, you know, I'd like to clarify that, and it just speaks directly to the topic today. And that is that I'm passionate about a deeper understanding of spirituality. I'm really committed to it, and I think if we could cultivate that more and more, particularly with respect to what the ancients had to say, the technologies are there. We have to be humble and wise and reflective and realize the subtlety of the whole thing. But the technologies are there in the ancient Vedic literature, you know, how to transform the world. It's all right there. But to do that, we have to look deeper. I even wrote a book, Look Deeper, Live Better. And so when I talk that way, you know, sometimes I'll even talk about, pick any religion, and they may say something about even devotion to God. I mean, you can pick anything. That's the first thing that came to mind. What does that really mean? Well, there are different levels of meaning to everything, including devotion to God. And on some level, it can be just an emotional thing, or an indoctrination thing. We were taught to be devoted to God. Or it can come from even the deepest place, where real devotion to God. What does it really mean? I mean, even the meaning of the word devotion changes. So devotion to God in that sense means finding that place within that's one with God and living a life in harmony with that on all levels of our life. I call that integration, transgradient integration. In other words, the surface of our thinking and everything, the surface of our lives are fully integrated with that depth. Or it can mean other things. It can be, you know, committed to some doctrine that we've been indoctrinated into, you know. So the bottom line, though, and there's a real point here, is that everybody senses that divinity within themselves, even if they don't believe in divinity. You know, like maybe some cold hard scientists say, well, you can't even prove there's a God, or what have you. But nevertheless, there's that innate instinctive commitment to something which dwells deep within, that, you know, the spiritually minded would say is God. We're one with God. That's what that means. physics perspective, we're all a unified field, and we can. And here's something that even physiologists are now getting onto: the idea that the human mind, the human awareness, is a quantum mechanical computer. And so, from the perspective of physics, what that devotion to God would mean is that we sense deep within us that super particle, they might call it, though that's a little misleading if you don't know much physics, but that one thing that dwells deep within us, which is our essence, that's one with everything. And then there are echoes to that. Again, everything exists transgradiently, so there can be an emotional echo. Oh yeah, I feel my oneness with, whatever. And I feel my oneness with the universe, but that can be more of an astral phenomenon than a truly perceptual one on the level of the depth, the deepest possible level of our being, you see? So what happens then with this idea of burning churches? What are we doing? Well, people feel that divinity within, and it's associated with the church. And in fact, the church then becomes a symbol. It becomes a gateway. It becomes a way where, for some people, every Sunday we go to church and we commune with that divinity. We reflect on it. We feel it on whatever level we can pick it up on. And even when you drive by a church, I enjoy driving by churches. There's one or two churches in the area, one in particular I'm thinking of, where the minister puts just a different quote on a little signboard that's out front, and he changes it every week or so. I enjoy it, and all those quotes, I can see how you can pick them up on a very superficial level, or it's just quantum physics, the deepest level of existence, however you want to say it. And I love it. But when we make a mockery of churches, or when we burn churches, what we're doing is attacking the very essence of another person's being. That's how it feels to them, and that's terrible. And also, churches then uphold that source of life, which is the divinity of all existence, the fountainhead of life, the source of our harmony, our creativity, our divinity. And to attack that, there's a lot of karma associated with doing so, And,
Well, Michael,
and yeah.
on some of that, I think, and I was just looking at this, and it brought up something else, because I had seen that earlier. There's been a lot of missing children among the indigenous people of Canada, and that's where the churches were burned. Where they're saying it's part of that whole disappearance of those children, due to, it's kind of like the Catholic Church had that problem with the priests,
Yeah.
being terrible to the kids,
And that kind of leads to,
Yeah.
where I was going next in a way. With that's great, Scotty, because the church then, in the sense we're speaking, dwells within us, and it comes in different forms and on different levels in different forms, and on a very deeply intimate level. Where do we see divinity? Where do we find the church in that more expanded sense of the word? Our children, And so when our children are being messed with, when the bond between parent and child gets compromised for whatever reason, it's a terrible thing. And some people would say that, what do they call it? Critical race theory, where they're, or the educational system is kind of alienating what the parents want their children to grow up with, alienating that from the children. And imagine the impact that has on the family unit, and the core of the family unit, the divinity, that one thing that dwells at the root of everything, including family dynamics, you see. And so when we talk about churches burning, look around. It's vogue, it's popular. Burn every church you can find. Attack this, attack that. criticize this, criticize that, undermine this, undermine that. There's no such thing as man versus woman. It's all just human or whatever. The idea of a nation, attack that. Forget the whole idea of national allegiance and the core value that exists there, and burn the flag. I mean, every church is being attacked and burned today in some way, on some level, you know. And what that does is it undermines that fine fabric that is the source of divinity, health, integration of individuals and of societies. Anything else on that, Scotty? You're with me?
Yeah, no, I'm with you. It's just, I think people are going to be like, okay, also the fact that, how do you've taken this divine sanctum where it's supposed to be this purity of the knowledge of whatever church that it is. And now you've got these terrible people that were using that whole thing for terrible acts. Maybe we could talk
Yeah.
about that,
Yeah, because see, that takes it right down to the title of this podcast, Churches Burning, Defiance versus Commitment versus Self-Actualization. And that speaks to motivation. Like, okay, if we are burning a church, be it in one form or another, be it an institution, be it a belief system, be it a group or a philosophy or whatever, it's not so easy to identify our motivations. And I mean, we could do a whole book on motivations. And by the way, in these podcasts, I'm pointing in a direction. I'm not trying to give you a cookbook and say, okay, listen to this, and then you get it. Because then I'm doing the same thing. I'm trying to indoctrinate you into something. I'm giving you concepts to reflect on and find the truth within your own self. And so if we look at the motivation behind attacking something, say, it's I don't think people usually are really in touch with the motivation behind why they do so many things. As I've said probably in the past in these podcasts, psychotherapists say that our psychology is developed in the first 5 years of our life. And that's kind of the dynamic we live for the rest of our life. And so if we look at that, what gets cultivated, what gets developed in those first 5 years? Well, I think one thing that, boy, if you sidestep this 100%, you're beyond normal for sure. And that is the whole idea of defiance. I mean, I can even remember when growing up and, you feel like you got punished or you got judged and it was unfair. And right there, I think a child is left with two choices, I guess. One of the choices would be, oh, I'm terrible. I did something wrong. And that's a betrayal of your own self, especially if you really believe down deep that, you were not intending to do something wrong, or you believe that, just from the depth of your soul, as far as you can feel, it was well intended. And so you either crush yourself or a lack, is defiance the right word? But there's a thing where if you hold on to or stay allegiant to what you really believe, then in a way you're defying authority. You're defying your parents. And of course, parents become a symbol in later life for all authority figures. And so defiance can become a major theme that colors and shapes the beliefs and attitudes of an individual that's carried through their whole life. And it can get reinforced, one, by projection. You're projecting the childhood family dynamic onto everything that happens. And that's not easy to identify. And that's an important point, is that it's not so easy to see how we're projecting our issues onto the world. There's plenty of facts that we can access and say, see, there's proof. There's proof. I'm right. Whereas to get past that and to really get in touch with, you know what, this isn't truth. This is defiance coloring reality, picking things out, cherry picking this, cherry picking that, spinning it a little bit, and now you've justified your defiance. And so I really think so much of what's going on in the world today, be it Antifa or whatever, it's we live in a world that is a large percentage of people have committed themselves to the defiance that they feel inside. They're angry. They're defiant. They feel like they've been misunderstood or misused, mistreated, whatever. And so imagine that. What rules a life is thematically defiant. It's no way to live. So defiance is a whole field. Again, we could do half of a book on defiance. I'll let you reflect on it. The next thing is commitment. Now, commitment, it's very different from defiance. Commitment could be something you grew up with and you became committed to, you believed in. If I can just stay committed to this, I'll be a good person. Maybe I'll go to heaven, or that's how I'm going to self-actualize. But oftentimes what we're committed to and what we really, as deeply as we can feel, if we remain committed to, then we're a good person, is more a function of, again, indoctrination. It's very different from the indoctrination of defiance. It's almost an altruistic thing in that sense. Whereas defiance, we could say, is an angry or raging or hateful thing. It can also be a humorous thing. Sometimes if there's a little bit of that defiance coloring our lives, and who isn't colored somewhat by that, we can even deal with our defiance with humor. Just a little flippant. Somebody says something and we kind of respond flippantly back. It's sort of a little hiccup of defiance, but it prevents real communion, doesn't it? Because now we're just defying people that we have a relationship with. Why? Because our psyche is colored with the theme of defiance. Whereas commitment is staying true to something you really believe in, you're really committed to. So again, defiance has an aspiration to it of staying true to yourself, not allowing yourself to be squashed. I will defy those things that are imposing that upon me and compromising myself. Whereas commitment is similar in one sense, but in another sense, it's the antithesis. When defiance, we're pushing away, and commitment, we're aspiring to. We're committed to something we believe in. But see, people can be committed to all sorts of things. Think of the horrors that are done in wars, even the Crusades. People were committed to Christ, and then they were going and attacking Arabs, or even nowadays, there's so many things that people are committed to that are just basically terrorist acts, So commitment, too, is a funny one. And we do well to explore our own commitments. It's not so easy to do. It's not so easy to identify where we're being defiant and where we're being committed just by virtue of the fact that that's how we formed our psyche. And both of those things are in contrast to self-actualization. Self-actualization, actually functioning from that place where you're one with that divine, acting from that place, untainted by or unovercome, or even tainted by defiance, untainted by commitment to something just because we've been trained to think that way, trained to believe that way. These things create the world. They motivate us to believe things, to feel things, to think certain ways. Motivation creates our world. And fathoming the nature of our behavior is far more elusive than we oftentimes think. It's easy to say, oh, I'm doing this because I believe in it, or I'm not going to let you do that to me, or I know better, or, who knows? These things are for you to reflect upon, to find within yourself, and it's an ongoing practice. I'm 70 years old, and I just recently got in touch with a certain, it's not that I didn't know it before, but just a certain flavor, a certain quality to the defiance I felt in my childhood, or that got formed in my childhood. Spend time with these things. And keep in mind that all of my podcasts, I think these podcasts are unlike a lot of podcasts or a lot of books that are written and stuff. I'm not telling you what to think. I'm not telling you what to believe. Hopefully, these are just opening the door, gateways to finding it within your own self, and thereby actualizing your own true nature, what you believe, not because you've been indoctrinated into, and how to think. It's not what to think, it's how to think in a way that's free. Freedom dwells from within, even more so than outside. I mean, I believe in freedom, from the outside and all that. But really, is your mind free? Is it free of indoctrinated commitments and wounds from childhood that compel you to defy? There's an expression, in that sign, you've all seen it. It's the rattlesnake with the 13 rattlers on it for the 13 colonies. Don't tread on me. Even that, you can take different people to look at that same thing. Don't tread on me. How beautiful, some would say, because it's coming from a place of self-actualization. I'm going to be true to myself. Give me the space to be true to myself. Other people look at it and say, oh, how defiant. They're just defying government. Don't tread on me. It's just rebellion. It comes from a defiant, spoiled little child, you could say. Other people would say, don't tread on me. Great. You're committed to this. And you don't want it messed with. You're going to stay committed to it. Don't tread on me. I know what I believe, Everything in life is like that. When we try to get to the truth of anything, it's colored by our psychodynamic structure, which determines how it is we view and how it is we feel about whatever it is that happens. The degree to which that's true is what I'm talking about here, and the subtlety of the whole dynamic and how challenging it can be to access those deeper understandings of our own nature. That's why I brought it up before, but I like that Bruce Lee quote, whatever it was he said about, how did he say that, Scotty? Do you remember? About just acting from fully manifesting your true self. It's not so easy to do. It's difficult to do, you see? And that's what we're talking about here. And really, it's not alone, but meditation, proper meditation. You can go online, go to on YouTube. I have a YouTube channel. The first couple of podcasts or broadcasts there teach you how to meditate. It's free. But see, even some meditations will indoctrinate you into thinking a certain way, concentrating the mind, focusing the mind, staying connected to something you're committed to, regardless of the level of that commitment and where it's coming from. But meditation isn't enough either, because so much, even with proper meditations, we become associated with a school of thought around that meditation that becomes another indoctrination. And we become so committed to that theme that it's almost like we're trying to let go of our identities while we hold on to a certain identity. that dances around the process. You see? It's all highly elusive, you know? People are rarely in touch with their true motivations, and that, I'm going to overstate it, messes up their lives and messes up the world, you know? There's a concept, you know, a notion about healing the planet. Somebody said to me just this morning, you know, they were saying, oh, you're doing a great thing. You're committed to healing the planet. And I try to let people know that. And I said, the problem with that, and I appreciate it, but at the same time, the problem with it is there are so many groups out there wanting to heal the planet. And so many are, you know, committed to, I don't know, wearing a copper pyramid on their head and howling at the moon, or, and that's just an extreme example, forgive me, but the point being that there are so many of those things, you know, people wearing the signs, the end is near, you know, that kind of that whole arena gets rejected and even mocked. And so to say that about me and to tell other people that about me, I can understand why they hear that and know they throw my head into that ring right away. I'd like to believe, and I do believe, that I really try, you know, to work with the things that we've talked about here. And when I found the teachings of the ancient Sanskrit texts, the Vedas, the cognitions, these things weren't made up. They weren't a function of somebody's defiance or commitment. They were a physiological thing, where the Rishis' physiology was so refined that they could touch into that fine fabric that is the basis of all existence, and live, and allowing that to well up through the physiology, out the vocal cords, and now they're providing that which is in harmony with nature, our nature, your own true nature, which is what self-actualization is really about. A little tangent here. Words. So much of the true nature of life we don't have words for. And things that you don't have words for kind of become inaccessible. We can't express them. I have a whole book of just lists of different terms that we use, that we've come up with, if you will, to try to put words to dynamics that dwell within us and that are huge parts of our lives. But the words aren't there to describe it. And if you watch, you'll see that a lot of what's going on in the world today is they make certain words socially unacceptable. You're not allowed to. Scotty, I don't know if I can think of any of these, if you can help me with it, but you'll find them. And so they make it socially unacceptable to use certain words, and all of a sudden people can no longer express themselves. So if you can control the words, you can control the narrative. And if you can control the narrative, you control the way people think and how they function and what they're committed to. You see? Just another example, the American flag. You know, what do you see when you look at the American flag? Some people see something so noble, something so laudable, our nation, the integrity of the nation. And as the cultural integrity goes, so the integrity of individuals is cultured. Other people look at the flag and they see it's something very different. You know, they're all anti the flag, burn the flag, whatever. But the flag is still there either way. So it's so much a question not of perception, but of projection. The world is made out of projections. Everybody projecting this and that, and whoever can take over the narrative takes over the group consciousness, which takes over the projection that defines reality. You see? So those words, defiance, Commitment can go either way, can it? You can be committed to being defiant, or you can be committed to finding truth within yourself, you know. But so it's subtle. A relationship with a thing is more important than the thing. I'd rather have a good relationship with a bad thing, which means stay away from it, than a bad relationship with a good thing, which means twist and distort it and turn it into something that's not. So what is your relationship with defiance? Your own defiance. What is your relationship with commitment? Your own commitment. What is your relationship with self-actualization? What do you think that means? How deep are you really looking? The idea of healing the planet has become, sadly, a silly cliche. But these cognitions of the ancient Rishis, in particular Mamuni Mayan, the architect, the cosmic architect for the planet Earth, provides a technology whereby we heal the planet. This isn't some emotional, oh, let's heal the planet, you know, but it's a deep technology. It's a science, but it's also a spiritual thing where the two integrate, where the two meet at the depth of the person's soul. And I'm committed to bringing that knowledge out and manifesting it. It's a Vedic cognition. It's not so easy to do. It's highly elusive. It's not a cookbook. The trouble with the Vedic literature is it's so deep and so profound that the essence of the meaning can slip right through your fingers. So wisdom, the flip side of wisdom is humility. And in our understanding of it, of the spiritual teachings of the ancient seers, we can't pick it up on a superficial level and be committed to that superficial level. Sometimes I compare it to a target, you know, and there's a bullseye right in the middle. And the idea of self-actualization, or even understanding the Vedic literature, is to go right. You have to go right to the bullseye. But if you can be really close, but if you go to that and hang on to that and aren't trying to find deeper, you go off on a tangent and you miss it. You miss the mark, you see. Very subtle, very elusive. It's not a thing. It's no thing. The only true knowing is knowing that you know nothing. Now, this can sound far-fetched or far out, and you know what? It is. It's deep. It's profound. And that's the direction we want to go, you see. I think that's about it. Scotty, anything else?
It's funny because you were talking about the arrow thing earlier when you were talking. I was picturing, you know, how like we could be in like being in like a spaceship, and if if I'm only clinging to certain realities or certain understandings, or if, using, like, let's say I was identifying with a certain group, Democrat, Republican, whatever it is, it's like my spaceship can only fly in those quadrants, you know, if I'm depending on my relationship with it. But if I just keep cultivating that, you know, relationship with those things, you can fly that spaceship wherever you want. Now, I
It's
know
beautiful, Scott.
yeah.
And you know what? It reminds me of that, you know, remember I've talked about the docking station.
Yeah.
And this ties into, we could do a whole podcast on Darwin and evolution and what it means. But the idea here is that through reflection, through meditation, through looking deeper, through questioning our defiance, our commitments, looking deeper in our understanding of self-actualization, what happens? It's like we're on a satellite or spaceship, and there's a mother station, which is, in this analogy, divine knowledge, you could say. And the idea is that as we work with our understanding, we slowly approximate closer and closer to that divine inner knowledge that we have, but we can't really access. But once we get close enough, then the docking station, the pull of the docking station is enough that we click in. We click into that divinity that dwells within our own being. That's sometimes referred to as cosmic consciousness, you know. And that process even occurs on different levels of our being. You see, the aha, I get it. Oh, of course, I get it can also have different levels. But, well, I'm tempted to get into the whole Darwin thing, but it's too much right now. But yes, Scotty, that's right. We keep exploring, we keep working, we keep going deeper, we keep going deeper. And I get it. But then if we go deeper, oh no, I thought I got it. Now I get it. No, 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 no. There's a whole thing in Vedic literature. How's it pronounced? Niti, 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 something like that. It's not that, not that, not that. And once you let go of this, let go of that, look deeper, 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 then you do discover that which is no thing. But to say it like that, it's just a concept. And if you get the concept, it's a nice beginning, but don't mistake it for the end. The goal is physiological. It's not another cookbook, you see. Yeah, that's good, Scotty. All right, I guess that's it for today. Huh? Scotty, anything else?
Sure. No, I mean, yeah, we could go on all day on this stuff.
You're not kidding. That's so true. Yeah, but I think it's enough for today. All
Yeah.
right, Scotty, that's great, man. Thanks a lot. And everybody, take care. We'll talk to you again next week.